today we are going to be watching simple mistakes that changed history forever. I have never made a mistake. I don't know anybody who's ever made a mistake, so let's learn.
Crazy mistakes that changed history forever. The Titanic dismissing iceberg warnings.
And why would they do that?
In the evening
Captain Hindsight be like.
hours of April 14th, 1912, the Titanic was just reaching the midpoint on its voyage to New York City. And as we all know, the Titanic never made it. All of this is relatively
Spoilers! Oh my god, I haven't watched the movie yet.
common knowledge. But what's not commonly known is the fact that these icebergs were not out of nowhere. The Titanic's crew specifically received warnings from other ships in the area about a potentially dangerous iceberg field, and the Titanic not only received but acknowledged these warnings.
Then what? They didn't respect the Mia ping? And then they all died?
However, the tragedy still happened. And the reason why is likely one of the biggest mistakes ever in maritime history. Now, let's zoom in on exactly what led up to this fateful event and the mistakes that unfortunately caused it. One thing that's important to note is that the Titanic was not alone on its voyage. It wasn't necessarily surrounded by ships, but in a roughly 250-mile radius, there was 9 other ships making the same voyage across the North Atlantic.
There were that many? Dude, in the movie, I thought there was only like one ship and then they had like the little boats and then like there was the door and there wasn't enough room for both of them on the door because it was apparently the most skinny, thick door of all time. There were 9?
Heading in both directions, both east and west, in what is known as shipping lanes, basically imaginary roads in the water. Some of the ships that were slightly further ahead than the Titanic all made comments about a large ice field that was directly in the path of these ships, meaning that action was required to actively avoid this ice field. These
They thought they were just gonna go through it? How? How? No. We'll tank it. Check my build, bro. I'm unsinkable.
communications between ships were known as the Marconi messages, and these messages gave explicit information about where these icebergs were, how large they were, and how dangerous they could potentially be to a ship. In the captain's own journal that was kept in the black box on the ship, he even wrote down that he had been seeing extremely large icebergs and that the conditions outside were ideal for ice formations. Although with all of these notes he made, he had one note that he underlined in his journal that stated, quote,
I don't care. Try me. Not live.
no reduction of speed, meaning that even though the captain was fully aware of all of the dangerous icebergs and potential more to come, he didn't seem very concerned about them. And what's even more interesting is the plethora of theories on why the captain never slowed down, which is
I'm gonna say insurance claim, playing my ranked game so I don't care, or I'm too busy eating my food and watching my YouTube video and nothing can come in between that.
an obvious question that most would ask. If you know that you're heading towards a dangerous area in the water, why would you maintain such a high speed? And one of the most popular theories is that the person running the White Star Company, the company that owned the Titanic and other ships, intentionally withheld information from the captain to ensure that he didn't slow down speeds so that the Titanic would make it to New York on time, maintaining the company's reputation. However, I'm sure you can already see the irony. Regardless, at 11:39 p.m., the captain goes to bed and leaves his senior officers in place, and only shortly
then he went me. Why did he go on cooldown? We needed you. Why did you base?
after that, one of the lookouts in the crow's nest spots a giant iceberg directly ahead, and by the time it's spotted, it's already almost too late. The ship is moving too fast, and while the ship did in its last moments slightly steer out of the way of the iceberg, this turn could have actually made things worse. Because
do you think he blamed the guy steering the ship? Or do you think the captain took the blame? I don't know how this works because technically he's like the project manager, so it's definitely his fault.
Because now the ship wasn't heading directly into the iceberg was going to be scraping along the side of the Titanic, essentially ripping it apart.
You're good, you're good, you're good.
Over 1,500 people lost their lives, and the Titanic became a legend of tragedy. This isn't to say that if the Titanic had reduced its speed, it would have guaranteed not to sink. Although many experts believe that maintaining a high speed with such dangerous conditions approaching was definitely an oversight and a fatal mistake.
Can somebody sell me on a cruise? Like, what is fun about going on a cruise? Because then you're stuck on a boat and everybody's there and it's like a mall, and then this could happen. And I also feel like I would get bored because I don't have my computer. Free alcohol? Okay, you kind of already sold me.
Caused the Titanic to sink. As I'm sure you already know by now.
Oh, bingo night! Wait, that sounds fun! Okay, wait. Is that why all the old people go on the cruise? You get free bingo and free food, and it's technically cheaper than rent, and then also you get free drinks, and sometimes they have a casino and you can play on the iPad?
This video is full of things that are true. But what else is true is that finding a doctor doesn't need to be so hard. And with ZocDoc, today's video sponsor, it's easy. ZocDoc is—
I'm so bad. I need to go to the doctor. Not because I'm mentally ill, but just because I don't go to the doctor because my American mentality is if it's bad enough, I'll die.
Is a free website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click to book instantly. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across nearly every specialty, from mental health to dental health, eye care, skincare, and much more. You can filter for doctors that take your insurance, are located nearby, who are a good fit for your medical needs that you may have, and who are highly rated by verified patients.
Would you trust me as your doctor? Like, I went to school and shit, and like, I passed. But like, I'm just a little silly in my free time.
You can also see their actual appointment openings to choose a time that works best for you and instantly click to book it. Plus, ZocDoc appointments happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking.
Whoa!
And in some cases, you can even score same-day appointments.
Okay, wait, let me read this really long message. Wrong! The Titanic never dismissed the iceberg warnings. The reason the radio operator sent a kind of rude message was because that was the one listening on the messages from the shore, so he had the audio higher. So when the California sent a message, it was super loud. Also, don't disrespect Captain Smith. I have never heard about no reduction speed. Captain Smith actually moved Titanic's course to avoid the ice field. Damn. Is Captain Smith your Oshi?
Best part is,
I better see every single one of you defend me like that if I get Google Docking, okay? I better see every single one of you essay for me.
you don't even have to talk to anyone. Just click and book. So stop putting off doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/trustmebro. Also linked in the description to help you find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. Thank you, ZocDoc, for sponsoring this video.
Thank you, ZocDoc and Captain.
In 547 BC, there was a city known as Sardis. And during this time, the city of Sardis was under the rule of Corsius, the king of Lydia. The king—
Did everybody have an is name? Like, I would be BerryCrepe.
Kingdom of Lydia, for context, would be in modern-day Turkey. Now, what's interesting about Sardis is that this city is extremely well fortified, both geographically and architecturally. And what I mean by this is that Sardis wasn't only just a city with huge castle walls, it also was built on top of very steep mountains.
Oh my God, anytime something gets built on a mountain, I get scared. Like, even if I'm just like in California and I see like the really big mountain houses, I'm like, one day you could lose it all, slip and fall. Or like if people build really close to the water or like on a little island, that stuff sends fear down my spine.
Meaning that this was one place that you would not want to try to siege simply because of how unoptimal this place would be to attack. Croesus would have such an advantage when it comes to high ground invisibility and knowledge of how to navigate the landscape. Anybody who would try to attack and siege the city would essentially have a death wish. That was until Cyrus the Great entered the chat.
Dude, it is OP. Like, we don't really worry about that much anymore because, like, high ground don't really matter because if you come in my house, I got a claymore at the door anyway. But, like, back in the day, if you were on top of the hill, then you could just, like, throw rocks or, like, fart on them and give them pink eye or something. Like, you could inflict a lot of damage from being way up high.
The Great heard that Croesus was actually busy doing some other battles that he wasn't doing too well in. And because Croesus wasn't doing so well, he disbanded his troops and was basically taking the winter off to try to refight in the next spring. But when When Cyrus the Great got word that Croesus was disbanding his troops, he figured now would be the perfect time to try to siege this impossible city. And that's what happened. Cyrus and his troops showed up on the ground outside of Sardis, and Croesus, kind of shocked that they were even there, quickly gathered all of the troops that were within the castle walls, and a battle ensued. Interestingly, Cyrus actually won this initial battle outside of the castle walls. However, Sardis was still not sieged, and was still believed to be unsiegeable. And Croesus himself was still confident they would never get inside the city walls, and this confidence wasn't unfounded.
Dude, anytime somebody's confident, they get dunked on. Like, be a humble king.
Literally ancient prophecies stating that this well-fortified city could never be captured. That was until one tiny mistake was made. One motivated soldier in Cyrus's army was taking a walk around the mountain when he found himself near the back of this massive mountain, simply looking up and watching the city, when he noticed one of the Lydian guards at the top of the hill. The Lydian guard didn't notice the soldier, so the soldier just watched him to see if
How many people pick their nose? There's gotta be more nose pickers than you think. That sounded derogatory. Just know at least one person in this chat does pick their nose. Okay? I try not to anymore. Don't lie. You definitely have picked your nose in the last 30 days. And it's because, like, what else are you supposed to do? I need to know the option other than picking your nose. What, use your toe? I have the last 10 minutes. The last 30 minutes. Okay. But sometimes when you blow your nose, it hurts. Like, it's just too clogged. Like, would you blow a kidney stone? No, you would pick it out. Okay, maybe not.
There was anything he could learn. And what happened definitely changed history. The Libyan soldier, not paying attention, accidentally dropped his helmet down the hill.
Why?
And because he didn't know that he was being watched, he went ahead and retrieved his helmet. But
okay, he massively lost aura.
as he retrieved his helmet, he inadvertently exposed the only vulnerable position of the entire city. And after this Persian soldier watched this Lydian soldier go from the city of Sardis down to gather his helmet and then back up almost effortlessly, he knew he had some crazy intel.
Oh my god, he was a day one. Why did he do this?
Later that night, that same Persian soldier went back to the same location, tried to retrace the steps of that Lydian soldier that he saw, which he was able to do successfully. He shared this information with his army, and the rest is history. With their golden ticket into Sardis, Cyrus and his men laid siege to Sardis for 14 days, eventually capturing it. And it was with this siege that the Persian Empire grew stronger.
So what's the lesson here? Don't wear a hat? Be bald? I don't know. Right, they motivates. Sometimes I have an itch in my nose, so I press the outside of my nostril against the inside and rub it up and down. Okay, that feels pretty good.
And I guess it goes to show, no matter how fortified you think you are, never expose your back door.
Write that down.
Hitler sleeping in on D-Day.
Wait, what? I need to stop pausing the history videos, man. And on my birthday?
June 6, 1944 signifies a massive win for the Allied powers in World War II.
Guys, I only know who the Allied powers are because I loved Italia when I was a kid. I only know that because of Italia.
American, Canadian, and British forces were able to storm the beaches of Nazi-occupied Normandy in France, giving them the leverage to truly sink their teeth into the Axis powers, allowing them to ultimately win the war. And while we're all grateful that things worked out this way, why did it work out this way? At the time, there was a very real and dystopian possibility that the Nazis could have won D-Day and history would have looked a lot different. But that's a bit off topic.
Wow.
The biggest contributors to the Allied powers' success on D-Day comes down to two major points. One being the Allied powers' general clever strategy, and the second being a general lack of planning and communication in preparation for this attack. And when I say in preparation,
I'm sorry, just the way he drew him. Why did he get a stick figure Sona?
preparation, I mean the Germans knew that the coast of France was susceptible to an attack, and they were at this point expecting. But the only problem was they didn't know where the Allied forces would attack, and this was a major problem internally. Hitler and other high-ranking officials believed that Pas de Calais is undoubtedly where the Allied powers would try to land. However,
So if you're in like war, is a lot of like guessing? Like you kind of have to like, I don't know, prediction Andy everything because you don't know what anybody's doing. And maybe like way back in the day, you couldn't really see much. You'd have to have like spies and stuff. But then what do the spies get? Because that's kind of a risk. Like if you're a spy, like your entire life is on the line. If they catch you, like you're done. El Bozo. You try to get intel. Mind games. They are paid a lot. Are there any spies in chat right now? Who are you reporting to?
officials believed that Normandy was also a possibility. There was no general consensus on where they could have landed, and Hitler's solution was to spread out troops all across France's shoreline. And while this seems logical, it had a major flaw. No one individual location was extremely well equipped. And when the invasion did happen, it would take some time for a counterattack from the Germans to gather all of the other troops from the shoreline to the one area where the actual battle was happening. This mismanagement alone could be considered its own historical mistake, but
And with, this is also about this, but it's sort of kind of not. Wait, What if you went back in time in a time machine and you were like talking to people and you're like, thank God World War I is over. You didn't really. What do you mean one? Wait a second.
Doesn't end there. Due to some previous red herrings that the Allied powers threw, specifically staging a false invasion on Pas-de-Calais, when the actual attack on D-Day happened, German troops weren't sure if this was a real invasion or simply another distraction, which leads us to the situation I mentioned earlier. On the morning of D-Day, when the attacks started happening, Hitler was fast asleep. It was reported that he was up late the night before watching newsreels and fell asleep. Around 3 a.m. Now, interestingly, because the high-ranking officials did not believe that the attack on Normandy was not the major attack that they saw coming, they decided that it was not worth waking up Hitler, and they decided they would allow him to wake up, and then they would figure out what to do next. However, that window from the
I mean, I'm not waking him up either. He scares me.
Storming of Normandy to when Hitler woke up and began to make counterattack plans, significant progress was already made by the Allied powers.
Oh my God. Do you think the United States has a cute flag? The cutest flag. Wait, isn't there a flag with like a dragon on it? That's kind of cute. Yeah, wait, that one's kind of cute. Switzerland has the cutest flag. No, Wales. Wales has the cutest flag.
Leaving Germany in a really bad spot. Now, this doesn't mean that the Allied powers had no resistance. The Allied powers had to fight against extreme resistance and saw countless tragedies during this battle, with one of the biggest reasons being the Germans fought like hell because it was very well known among the high-ranking Nazi officials that if the Allied powers were able to successfully storm the beaches, they would have at that point won the war. So even though the Germans were unprepared for this battle, they still fought as hard as they could because they knew that this battle would likely be one of the last.
Anytime we watch history videos, I realize that in my Texas education, I got the TLDR so we could get a move on and talk about the Alamo.
Which wasn't far from the truth. Hitler spread his troops way too thin, tried to keep too tight of a grip on the entire operation. His high-ranking officials didn't take the attack on Normandy seriously and didn't wake him up, and for that reason, Hitler slept in until 10 a.m., 3.5 hours after the massive naval and aerial bombardment started to take place on French soil.
Say I slept till 12. Yeah, the whole world would have exploded if I was in charge of anything.
And I think it's important to note that while this was a mistake on Hitler's part, this mistake gave the Allied powers a lot of leverage, and the impact this had on history was net positive. So sometimes mistakes can be good if they're made by bad people. This video in total could have been 10 hours long with all of the insane historical mistakes. And while I can't make a 10-hour long video, I can make this video. And if you guys really like this video, I can make a part 2. So if you guys are interested in seeing even more, please let me know in the comments below by either commenting part 2 or even just leaving a like. Your guys' support always means a lot. And if you're new here, feel free to subscribe. We post every Friday. Let's move on. The Trojan horse. Right off the
Every time I try to do a heart, it looks more like a fart. I'm trying, it's hard.
bat, I'm gonna say there's definitely a lot of skepticism surrounding the entire Trojan War situation. At this point,
is it real? Am I allowed to ask that? To me, this is like Atlantis. Did it happen? Does anybody know? Is it possibly real? Maybe it was real? I don't know. I don't think so. Yes, it did. People are trying to figure it out. Like, I feel like I could pretend to be a horse.
Archaeologists and historians are pretty certain that the Trojan Wars, happened. Although there is a lot of legend.
Dude, they were so detailed with the paintings back in the day. Like, straight up wrecked them. Like, that is a very, very puckered butthole.
And myth surrounding the entire situation, specifically demigods and divine intervention and things like that. Another very popular possible myth is the Trojan horse situation. And while
oh my God. Okay, look, I'm gonna bust the Trojan myth right now, okay? When I was a kid, I was trying to get free Club Penguin, and then I downloaded a bunch of stuff online that I found on YouTube, and I did get a Trojan, okay? And my dad's computer, like, actually got destroyed, and we lost every photo, all right? Happens to everybody.
while it's not exactly proven to be true, it also hasn't been proven to be false either. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to tell the story as there is real historical roots, and the story is still rather compelling and interesting. So as the story goes, during the Trojan Wars, the Greeks came up with a very interesting method of attacking the city of Troy from the inside. That method involved a large wooden horse. Now, some versions of the story claim that the Greeks actually gifted the horse to the Trojans as a peace offering, saying, hey, you know, we don't want any problems. Here you go, you can have this horse. But
you'd see how this could happen. If some up to your house with a giant 40-foot Uma like statue of Gold Ship, you would take it. You would. You'd be like, oh shit, thanks, man. How did you know? How did you know?
Another version of the story that I think is more plausible, assuming the situation is real, is the fact that the Greeks were extremely deceptive with how they delivered this horse. Some versions of the story claim that the Greeks intentionally left the horse near the city of Troy and made it seem like they spent so much time on it, but then at the last minute abandoned it for mysterious reasons. Information was given to the Trojan authorities saying that the Greeks were building this horse as an offering to the god Athena. And because the Trojans didn't want the Greeks to have any sort of divine superiority, they decided they would steal the horse and offer it to Athena themselves, then getting the preference from the gods. Both stories are read out there, but I do believe that them stealing it for their own gain is a lot more likely than them accepting a massive questionable gift from their enemy at the time. Regardless, once this wooden horse was within Trojan walls, the hidden Greek soldiers inside waited until nightfall, slowly and quietly
I'd be so bored. Can we bring our Game Boy?
exited the horse and began killing the guards. They then opened the gates into Troy and allowed all hell to break loose. And while I'm keeping this one a bit short, simply because there is very murky facts associated with it, the city of Troy did exist, it did fall, and the Trojan Wars were a thing. The exact details on the ongoings are interesting. And while the story of the Trojan horse is more or less at this point considered legend, with possible historical roots, it's
but fun legend. And like legends never die.
definitely not confirmed. And while it's hard to say that that situation that maybe didn't happen changed history forever, I still think it was worth mentioning. Because whether the situation happened or not, we still learned a valuable lesson from.
Yes, W Whimsy. I think we should enjoy things and like them because they're fun. Like, so what if it didn't happen? That was a fun story, and now we can like joke about it and go to the movies and like watch it and 4D experience getting squirted on with little like movie squirters.
This legend. The Bay of Pigs time zone confusion. The Bay of Pigs invasion was a failed military operation by the USA on Cuba during a time when Fidel Castro was gaining a lot of power within Cuba and getting really friendly with the Soviet Union, and America did not like it whatsoever.
I'm not even kidding. We talked about this for literally 2 seconds and then we moved on and we watched Bill Nye. I still remember this because as soon as we shut our books, I went, what? I was so confused and it never came up again.
However, the U.S. president at the time, John F. Kennedy, decided that his best course of action was to secretly try to overthrow Fidel Castro, but in a way that left him some plausible deniability. And that.
Do you guys think you would be a good president? I don't think I would, just because I want everybody to like me. I'd be like, what they tweet about me? Okay, oh, no, they don't like me.
That alone is kind of a mistake on his part, because him being half in, half out definitely was a major contributing factor in the Bay of Pigs invasion failing, but it's not what I want to focus on this point.
He wasn't all in.
Smaller and even more hilarious mistake that took place during this already failed operation. There's a lot of nuance to the situation, but for a bit of additional context, when John F. Kennedy was running for president, he was running on a very anti-communist sentiment. And after he got into power, when there was a neighbor south of the American border who was very communist,
not me.
He had to do something about it.
Poorly placed box compilation.
But there was an issue. Cuba was getting close with the Soviet Union, and this was during the Cold War, so Kennedy did not want to rub the Soviet Union the wrong way. But at the same time, if Kennedy did nothing about Cuba just becoming this communist society, he was going to look passive to the people that voted for him to help eliminate communism, which is
he's got to make his stands happy. Like, he cares about the people who want him to win.
why he decided to be a bit sneaky. And by sneaky, I mean he literally assembled an army specifically of Cuban refugees in America. And he even went as far as painting an American B-26 bomber to look like it was Cuban, so that...
Is this what it's like when people are from America and they put Canadian stickers on their freaking luggage so they get treated better internationally? Okay.
When it was bombing Cuba, it wouldn't look like America was involved whatsoever. Although the bomber was almost instantly known to be American as soon as it was seen flying over Cuba, which is...
And it also had a McDonald's inside of it. We probably should have gutted that out.
kind of what exposed the entire situation. But we'll get into that. The ultimate goal from the American perspective was to simply invade the Bay of Pigs, build a small base in that area, and through the successful landing of troops in the Bay of Pigs, through the power of that army and through the power of locals now feeling emboldened to rise up against this communist government, they would easily be able to overthrow the government, kill Castro, and have a new capitalistic society installed in Cuba once again. But there was a few problems. One, the American forces, more specifically Cuban refugees fighting on America's behalf, did not have proper support for reasons we'll get into. And also, Also, the government actually underestimated how popular Fidel Castro actually was. The invasion started with the bombing raid from American planes on Cuban soil, and then the following day, troops were on the ground in the Bay of Pigs. However, at this time, the plan was relatively exposed due to that plane being poorly disguised and seen early. And because John F. Kennedy didn't want to catch the blame for having this entire invasion, he almost instantly withdrew all air support that was deemed crucial to the mission, basically leaving the troops that he had just sent there to die. He withdrew.
Did we just have one guy make a plan and then we're like, yeah, let's just do that? Don't workshop it. Just go straight in.
Through the support to have plausible deniability that, oh, I didn't want that going on, but in reality, that's exactly what he wanted. And all he did was just ensure the failure of that invasion. And due to the lack of support, the invasion only lasted 3 days, and the Cuban forces from America were either killed or surrendered. Now, this is where time zones actually come into play, because during this situation,
can we get rid of the time zones? Not because I have a stance, just because I'm stupid and I hate it. I hate the time zones. I just got back from California and I'm tired every damn day. Please.
Situation as the last-ditch effort.
Actually, no. Let's start with something simple. Can we first, when I'm president, we're going to have everybody in EST, okay? Because you can't spell best without EST. Yeah, you know. And we're going to get rid of the stupid freaking daylight savings because it messes up my brain so bad. I hate daylight savings. Like, I want to get up and I don't want it to be the butt crack of dawn, even though it's like noon.
Bombing plane was actually sent from Nicaragua to help provide support. However, Nicaragua is in a different time zone than Cuba. But the bomber jet pilots did not take this into consideration. So when there was plans for the bomber jet pilot to be accompanied by fighter jets over Cuba, there was an hour difference between their plans. Meaning in this last-ditch effort, this bomber plane was unescorted by fighter jets, leaving it extremely vulnerable, cutting that plan short.
Should have used hammer time. Everybody get on the Discord.
To when the time actually came. And this sort of last-ditch effort failure was the nail in the coffin. And the backlash because of this failed Bay of Pigs invasion was the following. One, Fidel Castro only grew stronger as a leader because in the eyes of the Cuban citizens, he had just defended the country from an attack from the American government, the biggest military machine in the world, making him look like an extremely strong and powerful leader. And besides making the citizens favor Fidel even more, this made Fidel favor the Soviet Union even more, which is why this situation was basically the catalyst for the Cuban Missile Crisis, which only happened a year later.
Is this why I only learned about this for 2 minutes and didn't hear anything else? I'm starting to see a pattern here, and this is just like a, we don't talk about that, let's just reset. My bad, freak you up, boys.
So yeah, although there was military fighter pilots that were not able to remember time zones between Nicaragua and Cuba, leaving a bomber plane completely vulnerable, that's more or less of an oversight in this entire operation that was ultimately a huge failure for the American government. And this definitely had very serious historical repercussions.
Yeah.
NASA ignoring Challenger warnings.
What? That's real? Oh my God. Dude, I went to school in Houston and we would like watch this every year.
1986, the space shuttle known as Challenger was set
because didn't they have like teachers on board and stuff?
For an amazing mission. The shuttle had 7 bright astronauts on board, and this crew was ready for takeoff. And on 11:39 a.m., just off the coast of Florida, the Challenger spaceship took off. Things looked relatively normal until just over a minute after the launch took place, the situation turned catastrophic. The space shuttle broke apart and disintegrated 14 kilometers in the air, leaving all 7 of the astronauts dead. This failed launch was a national tragedy. However, it could have been easily prevented. You see, after this devastating launch,
how is everything bad easily preventable? What is going on? We need Space OSHA!
A huge investigation was underway, and what they eventually ended up finding was that the cause of this entire explosion was the shuttle's rubber O-rings.
What? I am so glad I just sit on my butt and talk about videos, because how would I have known this? 2 little rings caused it to explode? What the hell?
Which may seem like a non-crucial component, but in this case, these components were extremely crucial because they actually sealed the rocket boosters. And if you don't have sealed
oh my God. And we have all seen me play Kerbal Space Program. I didn't even know rubber O-rings existed.
Boosters, then hot gases can escape, and having hot gases right next to massive fuel tanks is a recipe for disaster. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. Now, obviously, hindsight is always 20/20, and if they had that information previously,
I wouldn't have done that. This wouldn't have happened if I was there.
They could have prevented it, but they did have this information. Months before the launch, one of the engineers on the project, Roger Boyce-Jolly, along with other engineers, both repeatedly warned NASA that the O-rings on the boosters may not function properly in low temperatures.
They said that?
But these weren't just verbal warnings. Boyce-Jolly even submitted a formal, detailed memo emphasizing the serious concerns in the...
He wrote it down. He gave him the Googie Docky. Googie Docky? And they just skipped it and went next?
potential deadly consequences.
This explanation is cope with the billion of parts on the ship. One person saying that they don't think the O-rings are good is negligible. I mean, maybe there could have been more stuff. What else do you think would have been wrong? Like, maybe they ran out of fuel. Or maybe, like, I don't know. I'm not a space engineer. I'm just a little guy. Most of the low-tech boosters in KSP are canonically found on the side of the road, so swing around. Really?
And even though numerous engineers warned about a potential fatal flaw with this launch, NASA ignored all of the warnings. Obviously,
I worked at NASA.
Question, but it doesn't end there. Because once it was clear that NASA was not taking these concerns seriously, a group of individuals formed, making it their mission to stop this launch for the safety of the astronauts. Although they didn't have the authority or support to actually prevent the launch from happening.
I don't think I've ever been to a protest. Am I an asshole? It's just because, like, I don't know when they happen. I don't know how people show up. I don't know if there's a Discord. I just stay home. I'm actually the worst human. I don't show up to politically stand for anything. I don't comment on any videos. I don't comment on any chats. I don't like anything. I don't do anything. I am an invisible person. I do nothing.
Despite NASA being aware of the potential flaw, the launch still took place, and the world lost 7 astronauts, and NASA lost a lot of trust. One of the most
don't even get me started on flat Earth.
devastating parts of this entire situation is that NASA knew that the specific failure of this O-ring would only be triggered by a cold environment. And even with this information,
so then, we just went on the chilliest day ever.
They decided to launch the rocket in January, which...
What is wrong with you? Why would you do that?
Florida isn't typically that cold, but this day that it launched...
Okay, it is a little cold, all right? Don't judge me, but if it gets under like 70, that's pretty chilly.
was particularly cold, and even still, with both of these factors, they still continued to launch on that day. When doing research for this section, I actually watched a video by Free Documentary on YouTube that has a full 50-minute breakdown on why this entire situation happened.
We watch
and
this
while
every
I totally
year.
recommend going and watching that, and I'll even link that in the description, I wanted to quickly highlight the comments, because there was a lot of people commenting on this video that had personal experiences that were honestly heartbreaking. One of which comes from Leslie, where she states that her father was actually one of the engineers who tried to stop the launch. However, because him and other engineers weren't able to prevent the launch, when the eventual launch ended up happening and taking the lives of 7 astronauts, her father, as well as other engineers, became severely depressed simply because they felt they had failed the astronauts and even had a hand in killing the astronauts because they were unable to prevent the launch, which is truly terrible. Obviously, they were not responsible for the deaths whatsoever and actively tried to prevent them. However, NASA...
I guess maybe they could go to like group therapy together, because remember when we watched that what was it? The building. Remember when that big mall fell down and then like a bunch of people passed away? And then like the survivors, they like all got together and then they were like going to therapy together and like talking to each other, because I feel like you would really need like a community or people who understand, because that's really hard to talk about.
Was unwilling to take their advice. The Chernobyl disaster. The story of Chernobyl is one that we are all likely familiar with at this point in time, but it cannot be understated how much of an impact this tragedy had not only on innocent civilians, but also on the outlook on nuclear power for decades to come. Ironically,
is there... Okay, this is the world's dumbest question. Let me Google it or ask. We have nuclear power plants in the U.S.? I didn't know. I had to look it up. I didn't know. I was like, I don't know, Simpsons?
the Chernobyl disaster took place once again in 1986. Not a good year for global tragedies. And while the situation was different, it did have some overlap. Specifically with the fact that this disaster too could have been easily avoided with simple safety regulations.
Guys, safety's for losers. Am I right? Let's go as fast as we can and let's like pump out as much product as we can and then make sure that we waste as less money as possible. Yeah, screw it. I'm doing backflips, freaking going like this in the pit, Making sure I swirl it up real nice, shake it up a little bit, take a little sip just to make sure it's clear.
The Chernobyl power plant was one of the most advanced in the entire country. Specifically, Reactor 4, the reactor that exploded, was the newest, only being made 3 years before the disaster. On the day of the tragedy, a safety test was supposed to be carried out by the day crew during their shift. However,
No. I trust the day crew to do nothing.
I was a bartender. I'd show up, lemons, limes everywhere, freaking smashed cherries all over the floor, boogers and snot and doo-doo caca all over the walls. Never trust the day crew to do a night crew job, okay?
did not carry out the safety test during the day, so the night crew had to take over. This doesn't seem like a big deal until you understand that the night crew was not nearly as trained as the day crew, and they were not supposed to be doing safety tests. However, in this case, they did. They had minimal time to actually prepare for how this was going to happen, or how to properly deal with any sort of adversity in case something went wrong. And on top of their poor training and lack of experience, the Soviet Union...
My dad worked at one of these. Wait, why did you say worked? Uh-oh.
Sort of adversity in case something went wrong. And on top of their poor training and lack of experience, the Soviet Union was also very secretive about this technology in general. So even the people that were experienced in the situation were not fully in the loop with how everything was even operating to begin with.
How many people work on a job and they have no idea what they're doing and then they just do it? Have I ever faked it till I made it? Yeah. Wait, that's why I'm a React Andy.
However, the night crew went about doing the safety test, and this safety test is exactly what resulted in the explosion of Reactor 4. Now, this isn't to say that this was the only issue that took place within Chernobyl, because at this point it is well known that Chernobyl had serious design flaws that were essentially destined to fail, and...
Well, I mean, it's glowing red. Why didn't they go and check on that?
Similar to the situation we just talked about, there was people working within the Chernobyl power plant that had reservations about the entire system that they were even using. Although, once again, their warnings were ignored. One of the biggest design flaws was that Chernobyl actually had a positive feedback loop when things were not going good. In most other nuclear power plants, if things were to get out of control, there would be a negative feedback loop, meaning that even without any human intervention, if the power plant was out of control, the reactor would by default cool down, produce less energy, and eventually fizzle out. However,
oh, that's why they put all the reactors near the water? Because then if it's next to the water, then they can cool it down really fast. But then what happens if it explodes? Does that all go in the water, or does it go all the way up into the sky and then it becomes rain, and then someday you're like singing and dancing in the rain and then you put your tongue out?
With Chernobyl, things were designed with a positive feedback loop, meaning that if things got out of control, the generators will only get hotter and hotter, creating more and more power, which would only then get hotter and create more power until the eventual explosion. On the day of the actual explosion, only 2 people died. Although in the 2 weeks following the explosion, 28 firefighters who were working on putting out the actual fire that took place in combination with the exploded reactor died due to radiation sickness. That's over 10% of the firefighters that helped put out the initial fire.
Oh my god! Dude, they risked their lives to save so many people too. All the rad stuff freaks me out. Like, how do you know if you're in like a really bad rads environment? Yeah, they were hardcore.
Explosion, 115,000 people were evacuated from a 30-kilometer radius, and 8 tons of radiation were shot into the atmosphere, which...
Is that why we have smog?
Me every time I land in LA.
Oh, there's the elephant foot.
Eventually made its way over almost all of Europe. And after everything was said and done...
No.
What if I just want to spread fake news and just like lie? I think that's kind of fun. Like sometimes it's fun to lie.
The toxicity of the radioactive cloud that came out of this explosion was equivalent to 400 Hiroshima atomic bomb explosions. Not in terms of actual explosive disaster, but specifically in terms of radioactivity. As of right now, this entire situation cost over $700 billion US.
Oh my god! Think of all the Steam games. All the Xboxes.
And today, the cleanup is still going on, and the total cleanup for the Chernobyl situation is expected to be completed in 2065.
Holy shit! I'm gonna be dead!
Almost 80 years after the initial explosion, the accidental discovery of penicillin. Yep, you've heard me right. This video has been relatively dark, so I figured for the last...
Wait, they accidentally found it? Wait, no. I was thinking of pasteurization. I was like, was he just swishing the milk around in his mouth until it was good?
Yep, that's clean.
Entry on this list, I'd leave it on a positive note. In 1928, Scottish physician Alexander Fleming was studying...
Cool name.
specific bacterial culture. And during this study, he decided that he would leave his culture plate out on his workbench over the weekend. That's not so odd. But what was odd was the fact that when he came back on Monday morning to check on this bacteria culture he had left out, he had noticed that there was mold growing on the plate. Now,
Ew! Just like my keyboard and my desk mat and my roadcaster and my microphone and my suit and my clothes over there and the paper towels, and there's also 2 socks on the floor and there's some pants right there, and yeah, not looking good.
now, initially, having mold growing on your bacteria culture means that the sample is just worthless and you have to start again. But he noticed something interesting.
Could we do this? Like right now, could I just put a bunch of like stuff in a petri dish and just let it run its course? Dude, the human experience is awesome.
Bacteria that was surrounding this mold was destroyed and didn't exist anymore. And this gave him an interesting idea. He began to continue tests to see how powerful this mold could be when it comes to neutralizing.
Dude, he knows he's farming. Look at that picture top left. That's an album cover. He knows he cooked. Oh, yeah.
And destroying bacteria. And it was this observation that eventually led
Penis killing. All that hard work for me to say that.
to penicillin, the world's true first antibiotic, which at this point has saved millions upon millions of lives. The mold is known as Penicillium notatum, and that little bit of mold just magically appearing on Fleming's culture plate undoubtedly had a massive impact on history forever.
Actually, I'm gonna say W because he didn't name it like the Flemington Mysterion. Like, he named it penicillin, and he could have named it after himself and been a narcissist like some speedrunners do, but he didn't. He had integrity in his field.
And just goes to show, sometimes something you perceive as negative actually ends up being the best thing that could possibly happen to you. And just imagine what could have happened if Alexander wasn't feeling so inquisitive this day and just decided.
So what's the positive side to pooping your pants? Like, now I get to wear new pants!
Decided to angrily throw out this culture plate because it wasn't to his liking and had mold on it. History is truly wild. But what else is wild is that you're still watching this video and you haven't subscribed yet. If you are subscribed, you're a true bro. And if you haven't yet, consider it. And like I said, if you want another video about historical mistakes, leave a like or a comment below. But that's it for me. If you want to watch more Trust Me Bro, check out this video on screen right now.
I was just laughing because that was not the video I was expecting.
It's a video about how every major dictator died. It's some pretty interesting and pretty morbid history. Thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, trust me, bro.
Thank you so much for watching. I super appreciate it. Please come by the Twitch stream, twitch.tv/BerryCrepe, or use code Berry for 10% off your gamer subs. That also helps me out. I know my mouth isn't moving, but just pretend it is. How about now? Bye!